very warm welcome to another edition of World Panorama. Here we are getting you your weekly dose of major international news with a perspective. I'm Sana Khan. Before we get you detailed reports, here's a look at the top stories this week. India-France discuss progress in the $15 billion Rafale fighter jets. Deal unlikely before September, though. World Panorama takes a look at the Indo-French defense ties. US Vice President concludes India visit, proposes trilateral talks between India, US and China, calls for stronger US-India business ties. Pakistan's former ruling party PPP says it will boycott the upcoming presidential election. 706 Electoral College members to elect the 12th president of Pakistan on 30th July. And after Lance Armstrong cycling hit by another doping scandal, Stuart O'Grady dropped from the Australian Olympic Committee's Athletes Commission. Straight to the story in focus this week. Let's start by talking about the Indo-French defense ties. The French Defense Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian met his Indian counterpart K Antony in New Delhi to discuss the $15 billion Rafale fighter planes deal. India, the world's biggest arms importer in recent years, plans the massive spends to upgrade its largely Soviet-era military equipment as it looks to keep pace with neighbor and Asian rival China. Earlier in 2012, Rafale had emerged as the preferred bidder in this contest to supply India with 126 warplanes, lifting hopes for a sale that would boost France's national pride and restore the lustre of its aviation sector. These 126 medium multi-role combat aircraft deal is the biggest focus of the two sides at the moment. India has been treading cautiously on the contract, which would be the biggest ever defense deal for the country in case it is signed. Now, given the state of play in the defense ministry back home, the deal is unlikely to be finalized before the end of September. By then, the election season would have set in and no bureaucrat would want to sign this deal. Now, in such an eventuality, the deal is likely to be decided by the next government. Let's talk a bit more about this. Joining me to discuss this is Kamal Mitra Chenoy, Professor and Chair, Center for Comparative Politics and Political Theory from the School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. Thanks, sir, so much for joining me. Let me start by asking you about the defense ties between India and France. We do have some graphics compiled will show that these ties go back in time and not very recent. In fact, this meeting marks the 15th anniversary of their defense ties. Your comments on how the situation looks at the moment?
Well, look, I mean, there's a problem which has to be solved. And that is that we have not upgraded our aircraft, that is the MiGs and the Sukhois, adequately.
Right. And
even the aircraft carrier, Admiral Groshkov, is old. But the problem is about speed. And the defense minister, Mr. Antony, is known for his honesty. So he will go very carefully over the documents. And that cannot be done fast. Second thing is, we had an advantage with the Russians because even if we had a problem with Pakistan,
right,
the suppliers would not shut down spares. But the Western suppliers might. So this will have to be part of the deal, that in case India has some difficulties or is attacked, we will still get necessary spares. And I think the other thing is that we have a long history of dealing with Russia,
right,
but we don't have the same long history dealing with France. However, one possible strong point in the French deal might be that because of the economic crisis in France also, they might be willing to give better terms. And that is important for us because even our economy has slowed down.
So that you're saying could work to the advantage of us. But in terms of the state of French defense, we're talking the budget has been declining. How crucial is this Dassault deal? Looking at that, it's delayed, we know, but does it seem on track? Because all the, we've been hearing all the positives coming out from the French defense minister and so is from the Indian side.
Well, look, in an economy in this state, everyone is going to peddle whatever they can. But Dassault aircraft have generally been considered to be quite good. What has to be seen is whether these aircraft fit into the mix of aircrafts that we will have in case of combat, and also the price factor. So it's difficult to beat the Russians on price. But India will have to look at this. I think one of the things the defense establishment is looking at is to multiply our sources, to spread them out, so we are not dependent on any one manufacturer and one country, which is a perfectly good idea, but the price factor then also must be taken up, which again is difficult, as you said, because it's going to take time. With Antony, as I said, it take more time.
Yeah.
And then it'll be very difficult to do it before the elections.
Right. So delays is what we are seeing right now. Both sides obviously right now seem to be very cautious in their approach at this moment. In the backdrop, if you look at the Augusta-Westland deal also, so that is also playing somewhere in the picture quite prominently.
See, the French have a problem. That's an economic problem. And if they can get a good deal on aircraft, it will give their defense sector a boost. And also make others who are shopping for arms look at them more carefully. But in the end, I think what tends to happen, I'm not saying in all deals, but in some deals, that political issues of what our ties with another country are, and therefore we go in for the deal, as happened with Russia.
Yeah.
This will be more so now, because there is a multipolar world. There are a lot of people who have deals. The Americans will also line up. But I think what really has to be seen is how this fits into the mix of aircraft, how spare parts are available, what guarantees are given that in the event of any conflict, we will not be denied that. And if the country wants to buy some more, I don't know, but like, for example, heavy armor, tanks, all of that, then they might, if France could offer them a deal almost in perpetuity, okay, we're giving you this now, but 2-3 years later we'll give you that. By that time the elections will be over. Then India may well go in for that. So I think there is this intense bargaining and discussion because there is a very competitive market.
Yeah.
And I think that deal discussion should continue with other countries so we get the best deal.
Right. Therefore, nothing is being signed as of now. We've seen talks happening time over again over this deal. But what do you have to say about, France's statement saying that rather than a fringe role in the US pivot to Asia, we are now adopting an Euro-Atlantic African pivot. Do you think it will work in the scheme of things that we are looking at, work well for both the nations at this point in time? It's struggling economies and many other issues.
Well, listen, in Afghanistan, everyone got a beating, including the would-be pivot and the United States.
Right.
So it's not so easy to, and China is an emerging giant. It's also manufacturing its own aircraft.
Yeah.
So I think that is just something to make the French people feel good and tell the Indians, look, you're dealing with a strong power, so you should have links with us. But part of it is always part of the sales pitch. And therefore, I think it's very essential that we cut through the sales pitch and see where the reality lies. And adequate time and information is given to our defense establishment, especially the Air Force, so they can also judge which is the best deal.
All right. At this moment, strengthening military ties is what we are seeing in between India and France in terms of equipment and technology. Let's see where this deal really ends. Thanks so much for joining me and sharing your views with our viewers here on World Panorama.
Thank you. And
now let's continue tracking other stories. Vice President Joe Biden was in India for a 4-day visit aimed at strengthening economic and defense ties. The US sees India as an important part of the Obama administration's rebalance towards Asia. Biden's visit is the first to India by an American vice president in 3 decades and follows US Secretary of State John Kerry's trip by just a few weeks.
In one of the most high-profile visits to the subcontinent this year, US Vice President Joe Biden arrived on a 4-day visit to boost trade ties and protect intellectual property. On Tuesday, Biden met President Pranab Mukherjee, Vice President Mohammad Hamid Ansari and Prime Minister Manmohan Singh in New Delhi. US Vice President Joe Biden on Wednesday called for further expanding the growing economic cooperation with India and expressed hope that if right choices are made, bilateral trade could grow 5-fold. During a wide-ranging speech at the Bombay Stock Exchange, Biden urged India to shun protectionism, calling for bold decisions to strengthen its economy.
We Americans are confident that India will continue to rise because we believe you'll take the additional steps necessary to spur further growth and enhance your economic influence around the world, and in the process, lift the whole world. We want to be your partner in that venture, in lifting the economy of the world.
He spoke of the need for India, China and the United States to work together to advance common economy and security interests.
There are three big nations. We are three big nations, China, India, and the United States, with our own perspectives. We have significant common interest. All three of us and the entire region would benefit if we coordinated more closely. America and India have already built strong trilateral dialogue with Japan. It's past time we launch one with China.
Joe Biden sought to ease Indian concern about a possible political settlement with the Afghan Taliban.
I know there are questions about the U.S. position on reconciliation with the Taliban. I want to be clear. We have always been committed to an Afghan-led, Afghan-owned process that meets three outcomes. The Taliban must, one, break with al-Qaeda permanently, stop the violence, accept the Afghan constitution, and guarantee free and equal treatment for women.
The first US Vice President to visit India in over 3 decades, Biden appreciated India's regional role and welcomed its engagement and efforts to develop new trade and transportation links by land and by sea. The renewed US attention on India in the recent months comes less than 2 years after the Obama administration named the South Asian country as a key player in its pivot or rebalance towards Asia-Pacific region.
A short break. I'll be back with more world news. Also, a look at the Pakistan politics as it shapes up. Major parties announce their presidential candidates. Don't go anywhere. Thanks for staying with us. Pakistan's Supreme Court has ordered the country's presidential election be held a week earlier than planned. The Election Commission had scheduled the vote for August 6th, but the July 24th ruling moves it up to July 30th. Because of this, Pakistan People's Party decided to boycott the presidential election. Incumbent Asif Ali Zardari is not seeking a second term because his Pakistan People's Party lacks enough lawmakers to win him re-election. The presidential election comes as Sharif struggles to overcome the crippling energy shortages and a Taliban insurgency.
Pakistan's main political parties have named their nominees for the upcoming presidential poll, as the Supreme Court revised the date for the elections and asked the Election Commission to hold it on July 30th instead of 6th August. Pakistan's ruling party nominated a former governor of the southern province of Sindh as its presidential candidate.
सदर जो है वो पूरे मुल्क का होता है, हर फर्द का होता है, और मैं इंशाल्लाह भरपूर मेरी कोशिश होगी कि पूरी गैर जानिबदारी के साथ सबका सदर बन के मैं काम करूं, और इसका इंशाल्लाह इजहार आपको मेरे अमल से मिलेगा, जो कि अगर अल्लाह से दुआ करें कि मैं इलेक्ट हो जाऊं.
The former governor of Sindh has remained a Sharif loyalist for decades and is currently a senior vice president for the ruling party. Zardari's Pakistan's People Party nominated Senator Raza Rabbani, and the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf party headed by former cricket star Imran Khan nominated Wajihuddin Ahmed, a retired judge, as its candidate.
जमहूरी अदारों को हमने मुस्तहकम करना है, आइन और रूल ऑफ लॉ को हमने मुस्तहकम करना है, और उसके साथ साथ नेपोटिज्म और करप्शन को हमने आगे चल के ख़त्म करना है.
In Pakistan, the president is not elected by popular vote, but by voting in Senate, National Assembly and the assemblies of the 4 provinces. The post of president in Pakistan became largely ceremonial in 2010 when Parliament passed a constitutional amendment that transfers significant powers to the Prime Minister. The term of Asif Ali Zardari expires in early September.
The Egyptian military stepped up its campaign against the Muslim Brotherhood on Friday as officials announced the possibility of serious criminal charges carrying the death penalty against ousted President Mohamed Morsi. At least 9 people were killed in heavy fighting in Egypt during rival mass rallies. The bloodshed deepened the turmoil, convulsing the Arab world's most populous country, and may even trigger a decisive move by the military against Morsi's Muslim Brotherhood 3 weeks after it was shunted from power. Egyptian security forces shot dead at least 70 supporters of ousted President Mohamed Morsi early on Saturday, deepening the turmoil which has convulsed Egypt for weeks. Mohammad Morsi was placed under investigation for murder in an escalating showdown with his Islamist backers.
And I know that my colleagues over at the Department of Defense have already spoken to this, so let me just further confirm. As we have said, we do not believe that it would be in the best interest of the United States to immediately change all of our assistance to Egypt. We are reviewing our obligations under the law and are consulting with Congress about the way forward. Given the current situation in Egypt, we do not believe it is appropriate to move forward with the delivery of F-16s at this time.
Earlier, Egypt's military chief called for mass rallies to give the army a mandate to confront violence following the overthrow of Morsi.
احنا بعد 30 يونيو في ناس كتيره ما توقعتش ان الشعب المصري هينزل بالوضع اللي هو موجود فيه دلوقتي، وفي ناس كتير مش قادره تستوعب ان الشعب المصري خلاص قرر مصير وان مفيش رجوع للخلف تاني، والناس نازله النهارده عشان تاكد على مطالب 30 يونيو اللي هي امتداد لثوره 25.
The Muslim Brotherhood boycotted a national reconciliation meeting that was being held by Egypt's interim government amidst growing political divisions and ongoing violence throughout the country. The meeting brought together representatives of liberal political parties and civil society, but no representatives of Islamist political parties attended. The US has decided to halt the planned delivery of F-16 fighter jets to Egypt.
أنا بطلب من المصريين طلب يوم الجمعة الجاية لابد من نزول كل المصريين الشرفاء الأمناء.
The delay is the first direct action the US has taken since the Egyptian military ousted Morsi and installed a new civilian government. There is deepening alarm in the West over the army's move against Morsi. The country of 84 million forms a bridge between the Middle East and North Africa and receives $1.5 billion a year in mainly military aid from Washington. A look now at Globe Watch, other international news compiled for you in a quick wrap. North and South Korea blamed each other after the 6th Kaesong talks aimed at reopening the jointly run industrial zone broke down without further agreement. South Korean Unification Ministry warned the North that it would take grave action if the rival wouldn't show sincere attitude. The two sides had been unable to agree on measures to prevent a recurrence of the shutdown, and no plan has been made for more talks. Close to 1 million Catholic faithful flocked to the shores of Rio de Janeiro's famed Copacabana beach Thursday to attend the World Youth Day opening led by Pope Francis. Thousands lined up the famous Avenida Atlantica that overlooks the broad crescent-shaped beach to catch a glimpse of the first Latin American Pope as he drove by waving from his white open-topped Pope-mobile. Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy on Thursday promised 2 investigations of the deadly train derailment in northwestern Spain, with suspicion focusing on excessive speed as the cause of the disaster. The accident has left at least 80 people dead. State railway company Renfe said it was too early to determine the cause of the tragedy, but several media outlets said the train was going at twice the speed limit when it crashed near the northwestern town of Santiago de Compostela late Wednesday. Disgraced former Communist Party leader Bo Xilai was on Thursday charged with bribery, embezzlement and abuse of power by prosecutors in China's eastern Shandong province. Bo, the former Communist Party chief of Chongqing municipality, was charged with bribery, embezzlement and power abuse. The 64-year-old high-flying communist leader is currently under detention while his wife Gu Kelai is serving a suspended death sentence for the murder of a British national. Shifting gears, time to bring you up to speed with all the sports news that you might have missed through this week. Here's all the sports action.
Australian cyclist Stuart O'Grady could be stripped of his Olympic medals after admitting to using performance-enhancing drugs at the 1998 Tour de France. O'Grady, who had retired this week, told a newspaper that he had used the banned blood booster EPO before the notorious 1998 Tour. The admission came after a French Senate inquiry named him among riders with suspicious test results and damning report into the 1998 race. The AOC had earlier called for the 39-year-old to step down from its Athletes Commission, a 10-member advisory body comprised of respected local athletes. Russia's 2-time Olympic pole vaulting champion Yelena Isinbayeva announced that she would retire after next month's World Championship in Moscow. Isinbayeva won gold at the Athens Olympics in 2004 and successfully defended her women's pole vault title 4 years later when she leaped to a new world record in Beijing. She also won bronze at London 2012. Barcelona hired Argentine Gerardo Martino, known as the disciple of the club's possession-based style, to replace Tito Vilanova as coach. The 50-year-old Martino, a Rosario native like Barca's World Player of the Year Lionel Messi, has agreed to a 2-year contract, his new club said on their website. Villanova stepped down last week to continue treatment for throat cancer after leading Barca to the La Liga title in his first season since taking over from Pep Guardiola. Spanish rookie sensation Marc Marquez outdueled pole sitter Stefan Bradl to win the US Grand Prix for Honda and stretch his lead at the top of the MotoGP standings to 16 points. It was the second consecutive win and third of the season for the 20-year-old, who becomes the youngest rider to win back-to-back races in the Premier class. Marquez has 163 points to compatriot and teammate Dani Pedrosa's 147. Indian women archery team arrived in New Delhi after defeating China in the recurve event and winning the gold medal in the Archery World Cup Stage 3, which was held in Medellin, Colombia. In the finals, Indian women's archery team of Primel Birelli, El Bombela Devi and Deepika Kumari defeated the top-seeded China 201 to 186. After the gap of 2 years, this is the first gold won by India's first World Cup women's archery team since the triumph in Shanghai in 2011.
Time now for all the very latest news from the world of movies and lifestyle. Here's our entertainment wrap.
Britain's Prince William and his wife Kate were spending their first day at home with their newborn son on Wednesday, a day after the world got its first glimpse of the little boy destined to become king. The Duke and the Duchess of Cambridge spent the night at Kensington Palace after emerging from St Mary's Hospital in London with the baby boy in their arms, to huge cheers and a roar from the massed ranks of international media. The first public appearance by the new family caused a storm on social media, with Twitter counting more than 18,000 tweets a minute. The world premiere of The Fifth Estate, a ripped from the headlines drama about Julian Assange and the creation of WikiLeaks, will open the 38th Toronto International Film Festival, which typically yields a number of Oscar contenders. Widely considered the kick-off to Oscar season, the 2013 festival will feature films starring Meryl Streep, Idris Elba, Colin Firth, Chiwetel Ejiofor, George Clooney and others. The 11-day event opens September 5. Alex Ferguson, David Beckham and Andy Murray are among the special guests appearing alongside Dennis the Menace in a special 75th anniversary edition of comic The Beano. In one strip, Beckham decides to move to Dennis's hometown only to look at a house next door to his ex-football manager Alex Ferguson. Another features Wimbledon champion Murray and his mum Judy and a game of tennis that doesn't quite go to plan. Dundee-based publishers DC Thomas have released a sneak preview of the special issue of comic book The Beano before it went on sale on July 24th. Rita Moreno has been chosen by her peers to receive one of Hollywood's highest honors. The actress will be the 50th recipient of the SAG Achievement Award, honoring her prestigious career. Moreno is one of the only 11 people to have ever won all 4 major entertainment awards, an Emmy, Grammy, Oscar and a Tony. She'll be presented with her SAG trophy at the annual ceremony in January.
That's all we have for you in this edition of World Panorama. See you next week, same time, with more international news. Till then, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. This week, I sign off with splendid visuals from Dublin, where thousands turned out to watch more than 1,600 people from 44 countries break the Guinness World Record for the longest river dance line of dancers performing the river dance. Goodbye and thanks for watching.